Good morning, class. I am Jamala Taher from BEd 2A, and our topic for today is all about goals and objective in assessing learning outcome. So, when you hear about assessing learning outcomes, what comes into your mind? Here in this lesson, let's talk about first the important role instructional goals and objectives play in the total or in overall instructional process and assessment process. You know, instructional goals and objectives play a very important role in both instructional process and assessment process. It serves as a guide for both teaching and learning process, communicate the purpose, the instruction to other stakeholders, and to provide guidelines for assessing the performance of the student. So for you, personally, why are instructional goals and objectives are important? You have to read it first. It's parts of the curriculum guide before you proceed in your lesson planning. So, assessing learning outcomes of the students is one of the very critical function of the teacher. So, take note of that. It is one of your most important function as a teacher. A classroom teacher should classify the objectives of the lesson because it is very important for the selection of the teaching method and the selection of the instructional material. So your objective would influence how would you carry the lesson, what method would be appropriate to use, what specific material would you use to complement your method, and that would revolve around your learning objectives or your specific lesson objectives. The instructional material should be appropriate for the lesson so that the teacher can motivate the student properly. The objective can be classified according to the learning outcomes of this lesson that will be discussed. So here are the specific purposes of instructional goals and objectives. Number 1. To provide direct for the instructional process by clarifying the intended learning outcome. Number 2, it conveys instructional intent to other stakeholders such as students, parents, school officials, and the public. And for the number 3, it provides basic for the assessing the performance of the student by describing the performance to be measured. So, what is goal and what is an objectives? Well, the term goals and objectives are the two different concepts, but they are related to each other. Goals and objectives are very important, most especially when you want to achieve something for the student in any classroom activities. And goals can never be accomplished without objectives. And you cannot get the objectives what you want without goals. So take note of that. This means that the goal and objective are both tools that you need in order that you can accomplish what you want to achieve in your classroom. So here are the different descriptions between goals and objectives. So goals are said to be broad while objectives are usually narrowed or limited into something that can be achieved in particular period. So goals general intention while objectives more precise. And then goals are intangible while objectives are tangible. Goals are usually less structured or abstract while objectives need to be concrete. Goals cannot be validated as is while objective can be validated. Goals are usually long-term and aim what you want to accomplish in long period of time. It could be an entire lifetime while objectives, these are usually short-term and it can be achieved in an hour class in 30 minutes activity. So that's how could short it is. So goals hard to quantify or put in a timeline while objectives is must given a timeline to accomplish and to be more effective. So here are the three different terms that you will learn about when you hear in the education program or in a teaching education. So, the first one is when you heard or read about goals. So, goals, these are the broad statement of very general outcomes that do not include specific level of performance. It tends to change infrequently and in response to the societal pressure. So, example of these goals are the learning problem-solving skills, develop high-level thinking skills, appreciate the beauty of an arts, be creative, and become competent in the basic skills in the area of grammar. You'll also hear this term, General Education Program Objectives, more narrowly defined statement of educational outcomes that apply to specific educational programs, formulated on the annual basis, developed by the program coordinator and the other school administrator. So, each education program do have this. Now, next, instructional objectives or educational objectives. These are the specific statement of the learner's behavior or outcomes that are expected to be exhibited by the student after completing a unit of instruction. So that is an example of how we write instructional objectives. At the end of the lesson, the student should be able to add fraction with 100% accuracy. So this is the example of instructional objectives. So, unit of instruction may means this either a 2 weeks lesson on geometry in mathematics or 1 week lesson on subtraction after additional or a 1 class period on ESP. So, dito yun, you can read about at the end of the lesson. So, most of the time, goals, general education program objectives are already written in the curriculum guide we're using in the K-12 program. But for us, teachers, we of course have specific teacher goals or learning goals for our student. And we also make instructional objectives for each lesson that we prepared. So, here are some problems that you might encounter when writing objectives. For example, the problem could be this. Too broad or complex, perhaps the objectives you have written is too broad in the scope or it is actually more than one objectives. So, how would you solve the problem? Simply, narrow it down, break it apart. Okay, next. Sometimes our objectives are false or missing behavior, condition, or degree. So, this is the type of error. The objective does not list the correct behavior or condition and or degree. So, it is missing. So, how we can solve it? Be more specific. Make sure that behavior, condition, and degree are included. And also, sometimes, instead of writing an objective, we write an instruction. So that the problem is called false given. It's described instruction, not condition. So how we can solve it? Simplify. Include only ABCDs. Next is false performance. This error type means no true, overt, observable performance listed. So what can we do to solve it? Describe what behavior you must observe. For example, demonstrate, illustrate, explain, and identify. So, to avoid different problems encountered in writing objectives, let us discuss the component of instructional objectives in other terms related to constructing a good instructional objectives. So, the first among the 4 main things that objectives should specify is number 1, audience, who. Who are the specific people that objectives are aimed at? Second, observable behavior. What? What do you expect them to be able to do? This should be an overt. Observable behavior, even if the actual behavior is covert or mental in nature. If you cannot see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, or smell it, you cannot be sure your audience really learned it. Number 3, special conditions. This component of instructional objective is the special condition under which the behavior must be displayed by the student. How? Under what circumstance will the learner occur? What will the student be given or already be expected to accomplish the learning? And lastly, the stating criterion level. This component of instructional objectives is stating the criterion level. The criterion level of acceptable of performance. Specify how many the items must the student answer correctly for the teacher to attain his objectives. So you answered the question. How much must a specific set of criteria be met? Do you want a total mastery 100%? Do you want to respond correctly 90% of the time among the others? A common and totally non-specific setting is 90% of the time. Always remember that the criterion level need not to be specified in percentage of the number of the item correctly answered. So, not necessarily 100% or 90%. It could also be stated as number of item correct, like 9 out of 10. Number of consecutive item correct essential figures included in the case of essay question or paper, or completion within the specific time, or completion within a certain degree of accuracy. So those are just part of goals and objectives in assessing learning outcome. And for the types of learning outcome will be presented by my group. So thank you for your patiently with my video presentation.